you're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Eatfluencer Podcast. I'm Maggie Landes, and I am so glad you're here this week. We are talking about resiliency in the face of diet culture. This is episode number 27. And if you are a new listener here, I want to just give you a little quick snippet of what I do. My training is from the clinical aspect, and I'm a board-certified physician and a public health nutritionist, but I now am a speaker, podcaster, health coach, where I help particularly women who feel trapped in a cycle of chronic dieting find ways to fix their food overwhelm and undiet their life and get out of their own way. And I really like to not only just work with individuals, but also move this mission forward, because as we're going to talk about in this episode today, the diet culture messaging, the diet culture narrative is a behemoth adversary. And so I feel like it's important to help individual people, but I also feel like it's important when I have a position to do so to speak out against the systematic oppression that is sitting in this space and really try to help the culture for everybody. It's really cool. I've met lots of people in this journey, this professional journey of mine, because it's going to take all comers. And I've met people in the fitness industry, the fashion industry, the food industry, culinary people, social anthropologists, public health historians, like all just super cool backgrounds who all want to do the same thing. And it's honestly going to take all of us. This did not happen overnight. It is not going to go away overnight. And so we have to, in the meantime, develop some personal resiliency to continue to exist until the takedown happens. So what I wanted to talk about on this episode is how to find that. And for many of you, I know you're just, burnt out and frustrated and have spent years and decades trying to pursue what you perceive to be, quote, health. And you may be starting to recognize, especially if you've been listening to me through this podcast or through some other venue, that, this is not necessarily the trajectory you want to be on, because this diet culture mission is not health promotion. It is not health care. It's not mental health. It is business. It's marketing. It's an extremely successful business model. And we've been told that participating is compulsory. And it's really not. It's optional. And you may be hearing that for the first time. And don't be shocked. It's okay. I went years and years and years without realizing that restrictive eating and dieting was optional. I was the same as you. I thought that it was just how we were, quote, supposed to eat when you are particularly a woman. But I'm here in this episode to help you identify some of those skills you have already built in and some skills you could maybe gain and refine to provide you that resiliency from the environment that you're in. Because the environment, that's another conversation. The environment is going to be there. So I thought I'd start with, what does resilient even mean, or resilience? And here's the dictionary definition. And I think this is pretty interesting when you look at it through the lens of diet culture and our relationship to food. But it's characterized by the capacity to withstand shock without permanent deformation or rupture. Okay, well, that's obviously like a physics definition, but it's a little bit metaphorical when you think about it in the terms of diet culture being a shock, an impact, and we don't want to be permanently deformed by it. I mean, that's really intense, but I think that's not too far from the truth. Another definition is resilient is tending to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune. Well, isn't that interesting? If that's not the most, diet culture is not the most misfortunate thing that we've had to interact with in every single aspect of our lives, I think that's interesting. So really what resilience means is that you can bounce back. You can power through, if you want to look at it like that. You're flexible, you're adaptable, you're not, put off course. You're strong enough to withstand an external force. And we all have some amount of resilience, but resilience is not like a one thing. We may have different amounts of it in different levels, in our life, in different parts of our life. So it may be a situation where you may be really physically resilient to, let's say illness or physical pain, but you are less so resilient to setbacks with your finances. Or you're really resilient in the workplace and can change direction when the project changes and when the leadership changes, but maybe you're not as resilient when you and your partner get in an argument and your relationship is not, you don't have relationship resiliency. So it's not measured in, one uniform amount. But what I want to talk about today is this: do you have enough diet culture resiliency? Or is this diet culture pressure and overwhelm just completely depleting your reserve? And I'm going to say just, this is going to be redundant if you all are regular listeners of me, but if this is something that you're hearing for the first time, I want to be clear that diet culture, when I use that term, I'm not talking about a diet, a specific diet. What diet culture is a social construct. It's a group of cultural ideologies that eating should be restrictive, that we can control the size of our bodies, and not only that we can control them, that we should control them, and that your worth depends on you doing so. So obviously, I don't buy into that. And when you say it in that way, it doesn't even sound like anybody would want to buy into it, but we collectively are buying into it. $80 billion a year, we're buying into that. So I'm talking about the diet culture. When I say diet culture, I use that word a lot. That's what I mean. And I just want to make that clear. It's pretty hard to be resilient against, like I said, this behemoth adversary. We are spending so much time and money and energy and emotional bandwidth and undergoing so much physical and emotional stress, and fracturing our relationships with food and with other people just to pursue this social belief system of diet culture. We've been conditioned and impregnated with this belief system that was not even ours to begin with. So, the truth is, I want to get rid of diet culture. I have a teenage daughter, and I hope, in 30 years, she's not having a podcast with this conversation. I hope it's not even a conversation, but the truth is we've got a long ways to go from here to there. And the pressure of diet culture is evident everywhere in your life, everywhere you look, the language, the pictures we see, the advertisements, the business, the social, privileges. And it's here for a while to stay until we can all link arms and do this work and shake that tree. So in the meantime, while that's going on, I want to help you find ways to continue to develop as a person and have some personal growth, some health promoting behavior in the face of all that. Sort of knowing that for now, that's where we are. To me, that's what really enabling your resilience, where that comes in. And it's interesting too, because resilience is, if you read any psychology literature, this is, there's more and more and more writing on this topic, because it's become a focus for, mental health, and shifting some of the thinking, instead of just purely evaluating and focusing on a history of trauma, a history of stress, and the sort of negative aspects of the mental health model, and moving into a conversation about resilience and strength inclusion is a word that's used, competency-based psychology, which means, kind of empowering and giving ownership of the future direction to the individual, instead of focusing on unpacking the past. It's a little more progressive, and it allows, prevention and building and sort of forward motion to happen. In addition to, of course, obviously addressing any underlying, pathology and that sort of thing. But what it really tells us is that resilience is both a built-in trait and a strength, or a asset that can be learned. There are people that are more resilient to negative things, that bounce back faster, that have certain qualities of their personality that let them navigate stress and opposition more easily. So some people are better at it just by birth, but it's not out of reach for anybody. And there are ways to build that asset so that you can sort of have it as a tool. We know that we're going to be faced with challenging circumstances all the time in all aspects of our lives. Now, I'm talking specifically here about diet culture, and you better believe you're going to see it. You're going to see it on social media. You're going to see it when you go shopping in the store. You're going to see it in your doctor's office. You're going to see it interacting with your children, with your friends, it's everywhere. It's in your kitchen. It's in the restaurant. You can't get away from it. So having that resilience tool set, or that resilience asset in your toolbox, is going to really go a long ways. And so I did a little bit of reading about, well, okay, that sounds all great. How do we get there? How? And what's interesting is there's lots of factors that contribute. And it's not so much that you, as a primary focus, improve resiliency, but what it is improving these other factors. And so I'm going to go through some of these that I found when I was reading in the literature. This comes from a variety of sources, but having good problem-solving skills and being able to do that without them being inflamed by emotion is really important. Having the capacity to make realistic plans. Now, that is a big one, because diet culture gets us good here. And we really subscribe to the idea of perfection. And, that's where this whole cutting out entire food groups and micromanaging every single bite, every calorie, the logging, the tracking, the sort of neurotic, management, that's not realistic. And not to say that there's not important information sort of tucked in that package. And I do believe that people need to learn about food composition. I do believe that people don't even realize, what's the difference between A and B all the time. But when you package it in this out of reach, perfectionistic, unattainable format like diet culture does, it's very hard to drop that into anybody's realistic, everyday, actual life. Because and this is where I feel like the education is really deficient for a lot of physicians and dietitians. And I can say that I've been through lots of formal schooling, and the message we get, we get a lot about I shouldn't say we get a lot about nutrition. Let me rephrase that. We don't get a lot about nutrition at all. The didactic education we get about nutrition is mostly related to sick patients and hospitalized patients. And we learn this real molecular level sort of nutritional physiology and how to micromanage when we're writing TPN for ICU patients and stuff like that. There is no class in medical school, not at least in my medical school, that was like, okay, here's Joe Brown at the grocery store. He wants to buy groceries for his family. What does he get to help him, not develop insulin resistance? And like, it's not, that conversation is not happening anywhere. So it's really important, back to what I was saying before, that we have to put everything in a lens of realism, or it's just not going to work. Having good communication skills, having a good network of positive relationships, and that helps support a resilient sort of disposition. Having confidence in your own strength and abilities, and having that autonomy restored and that decision-making process restored, because that's another, fundamental flaw in the diet culture model, is that it's essentially totally underwritten by the idea that diet culture, they know more than you. They know your body better than you. They know what you need more than you do. And if you would just totally blindly let them tell you what to do, then everything will be better. And that doesn't really work, because nutrition is an individualized thing, but it also doesn't really work in terms of human psychology, because autonomy and agency go a very long way in, positive change. So that's super, super important too. So, and I want to say that, moving from this place of stress and negativity that we are in diet culture, and we're burnt out and we're tired of doing the same thing over and over, and we're getting mixed messages, and we're totally confused, and we don't know which end is up, and we're not getting where we want, either physically, emotionally. It's totally and completely draining. To move from there to a place where there's some positive thinking, it's not just kind of like having a bunch of happy thoughts, and I do believe in manifesting to a degree, but this is way bigger of a leap than just telling yourself that you should be happy. It's really about this, like I said, the autonomy of knowing that your satisfaction and happiness and success in life is not really synonymous with just having positive emotions. It also is a feeling of competence and independence, and being able to live in line with your values, and match those with your personal goals. And I can tell you, some of the most satisfying things I've done in my life were extremely negative experiences. And I'm sure you can think of many too. So, resiliency is knowing that you can get back there, is really what that means. So that's enough, psychology and this sort of deep existential thinking. Let's talk about some really tactical ways you can develop your resiliency against diet culture. Okay, I have a list of, what is this, six things here that I sort of, I don't want to say I stole them out of the psychology literature, but I borrowed them and placed them in the lens of diet culture and food relationships so that it would make sense and be relevant to this conversation. So let's just go through these quickly. The first one is knowing that a setback is temporary, knowing that nothing is totally permanent. And, that's the definition of resiliency, is bouncing back. And we have to do that when we're eating and when we're learning, and give ourselves this is where the self-compassion comes in, is know that there is no one meal, one food, one moment, one day that is going to wreck everything. Now, that's how it feels like at the time, and you see that all the time from people. Oh, and just recently it was Easter, and I saw so many times on, social media posts is like, well, I guess I ruined, quote, ruined or wrecked my diet with these Cadbury eggs or whatever. You can't wreck anything if you're looking at every event as discrete. So let's try to just leave our eating experiences, whether it's good or bad, in the moment, and not have so much lead up and kind of hangover effect, this emotional, baggage from just doing one thing. Number 2, reframe a setback as an opportunity for growth. All right, and this is how intuitive eating works, is knowing that you have to go through the experience, the whole range of experience, to know the difference between good and bad. If you only ate in a way that every single time you ate, felt, quote, good, and how would you know what that was? You wouldn't even know what good was. The only reason you know what good is because you know what bad is, and vice versa. So knowing that every discrete event is not permanent, like we just said. The second thing to do is know that there's an opportunity for growth and learning in each of those moments, and that, one doesn't undo the other, and that part of the experience of learning is having some negative experiences as a point of reference, frankly. And that's how intuitive eating works. And people get stuck there because when they start, they sometimes will go through this phase of like eating to excess things that they were previously restricting, and eating in a way that feels uncomfortable. And that's the response to the restriction. That's not the problem with intuitive eating. That's the response of your primitive brain seeing things available that were never available. So when you approach that with this fear and, oh my word, what am I doing? The impulse is to then go back and diet again. And maybe some of you all have been through that sort of cycle. Well, that's what sets up a sort of yo-yo cycling back and forth out of this restrict binge thing, which is not gonna get you there. So to know that some uncomfortable experiences may be awaiting you on the way to where you want to go is normal. And just the awareness of that, I think, does a lot for people. Number 3, recognizing cognitive distortions as limiting beliefs or complete falsities. That some of the things you think are not true. They're not based in fact. They're not true. They're not even true to you. They were given to you by diet culture. And so calling out those thoughts and drilling down to the science, if necessary, to find out, really discern true from false. That's part of it, because you only want to keep thoughts long enough to turn them into beliefs if you know that they're based on truth. And so recognizing that and making whatever accommodations to find out that truth is really important. Number 4, managing strong emotions and impulses. Well, if that's not just the definition of what we are all feeling in diet culture, there is so much pressure, so much wrapped up in doing the quote right thing, because we are told that everything depends on it. That having a successful relationship, having good health, living a long time, being a good role model, being physically active, getting the job promotion, having the baby, blah, 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 is all dependent on you adhering to diet culture's set of, rules and adhering to them 100% perfectly. So that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of stress. That's a lot of isolation and restriction. But what I encourage you to do is what we just talked about, is step back a little bit, try to unwrap some of the emotional ties that you have with these diet culture ideas and these how to eat, how to manage your body ideas, and try to step back to a place where you can approach it with neutrality and not have so much investment, so much emotional investment in it. Can you possibly lean into some new knowledge with open-mindedness? Because you can't do that if you are totally wrapped up in already knowing in your mind how it's going to end. I mean, it's called confirmation bias is basically what it's called in the literature, is in psychology, is where you see only what you want to see and you are not open to any other way. And diet culture does that to us. It blinds us greatly. Number 5, focusing on things you can control. Let me say that one again, because that's a good one. Focusing on things that are within your control is a characteristic of resilience. Well, spoiler alert, your weight is not on that list. Period. Full stop. Do things that are things to do. Your weight is not an actionable item. Take it off the list. There's thousands of other things to put on that list that will keep you moving in the right direction. Thinking that you can control your weight is delusional, and it is keeping you stuck, and you will continue to subscribe to diet culture as long as you believe that that is an actionable item. Okay, and then the 6th one here is not putting yourself in the role of victim. And, that's hard because we've basically been victimized by diet culture. Truthfully, it is akin to a abusive relationship from a captor or something. We are kept in a state of constant distraction, constant, emotional and physical abuse, told that we are the reason that we're in the situation, that we're the problem, that they know best. They've taken our autonomy. They've taken our, agency, taken any power away from us. That's victimization. And that's fine to feel those feels. But if you stay there, you won't get out. So, you're not too old. It doesn't matter if you've gone through menopause. It doesn't matter if you think you're, quote, too fat, or your body is beyond changing, or you, quote, can't exercise, or you already have a bunch of health problems, or you've been dieting too long, or your mom won't approve, or you'll lose your best friend, or you might have to change your job if you're peddling MLM diet supplements. I mean, there's a lot of changes you might have to do, and they may not all be pleasant or fun, but you have the power to decide if you want to continue to be victimized by diet culture. So knowing that there's a way out, there are people that have done it successfully, including myself. There are people that want to help you do this successfully, including myself. And I'm not the only one. We're here to help, and hopefully some of those ideas are things that you might be able to incorporate. So I'm going to real quick read the list of 6 just as a review. But I want you to know that, this is your little part. This resiliency piece is what you can do as a individual person. And you will not only be protecting yourself from that diet culture and starting to move in a more, progressive relationship with food and your body and with nutrition and your health. You're also going to be a point of light for those that are in your sphere of influence, even if that's just under your own roof or in the cubicle next to you at work or whatever. You have an opportunity to make a huge change that goes beyond just you. And then eventually, when you feel comfortable enough in it, you come back and work with me and we will shake this tree together, because I am really, really passionate about changing this conversation for all of us. So here are the resilience sort of tips. Viewing setbacks as temporary. Number 2, finding the opportunity for growth. 3, recognizing that everything you think is not true. Number 4, managing strong emotions and uncoupling them from the facts. Number 5, focus on things you can control. And number 6, stepping out of the victimization role. All right. I hope some of those ideas sounded like things you can start incorporating. Everyone can do this. If you would like my help, I would be happy to help you and continue this conversation. There are lots of actionable ways to transform your relationship with food and eating, and continually being barraged with weight loss and restrictive dieting as the only and the preferred answer is just not true. There are other choices. So I want to let you know I am going to be having another cohort of my group coaching program starting probably, I haven't exactly nailed down the date. I think it'll start the week of May 10th. But it is all virtual and can be done from anywhere. You don't have to be here with me in Texas. It's a virtual group coaching program. If you're interested in finding out more about that, go to my website, which is maggielandesmd.com. And there's a place there where you can get on the wait list, and that just means you'll be the first to get information when I do finalize the start date and start accepting registrations for that. So I'm super excited you were here today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you even more than that for supporting this mission and really being an advocate for the non-diet approach to eating and nutrition. So I hope you learned something today, and we'll talk again soon. Until next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.